As I said, this is a public hearing on the 2011-2012 annual school budget for Frhsd Regional High School District. The public hearing is our opportunity to convey to the community the quality program that's being supported with the annual budget for next school year. I started out with the mission statement of the district because it really does serve as a backdrop for all of the work that we do and the decisions that we make in terms of the budget. Mr. Shin, could I ask that you, my approach for this tonight is to really break it down into the following three sections. First is perspective in terms of what is the environment that the district works in, both internally and what are the external influences that impact the decisions we make and the programs that we run. Next is the product, which many of you, if you were here for the board meeting so far, you get a taste of, just a flavor of the kind of accomplishments that our students and our staff have. And what we saw tonight was just a sampling of what that looks like. And then finally, where we're going to spend most of our time is in terms of performance. Now, there are specific measures of performance for school districts, and it's both in terms of academic success and also on the price point of it. So we're going to spend a good deal of time looking at that data, all of which I hope to provide you, the community, with the information you need to make an informed decision on April 27th. So some of the influences that we see, and just in terms of budget development in general, the unusual thing about a school district budget is that it is finite. It has a start, it has an end. Unlike the program that we offer, the district develops its programs and its service with more than a one-year vision. We make investments in terms of our budgets. We make investments in our people and our students that bring us return in years to come. And at any given time, there are a number of initiatives in motion in the district. But the way that annual school budgets work and votes on the school budget, that is the chunks that the community sees it in from the financial perspective. It is a perpetual process from our point of view. And as with any successful organization, there are some philosophies that we employ when developing a budget and ultimately developing our program. Internally, we'll talk about what is that culture, how do we approach this, what's the research-based approach, how do we assess our work, and how do we know if we're performing up to our own standards as well as our community standards. One of the more interesting parts of this discussion for school districts is really the external influences in New Jersey schools. Primarily some of the activity at the state and both the federal level. There's a number of issues that have either been addressed, and that could be in terms of budget caps. The budget cap in place for this budget being presented tonight is a 2% cap on the tax levy. There are some other nuances to that, but that's the primary change in the development of school budgets for the year that we're putting together now. Some of the other areas which have yet to be fully settled include merit pay, tenure reform, charter schools, pension and benefit reform. There's a slew of significant issues that are outside of this organization's decision-making. But really, these are things that are external influences on how we conduct our business. And I say that just so that you get a sense of the environment that we work in as a backdrop for a discussion of the specifics of our budget. If we look at our product, it really breaks down into two areas. Our academic program, which is what you're going to be naturally familiar with, especially if you're parents with children in the district. The support services, you may not be as familiar with. These are all of the things that we use to put staff and students at the right intersection of teaching and learning in the most optimal environment possible. So whether it's guidance, it's even transportation and the facility itself. child study teams, the media specialists, the school nurse. All of these things are not considered direct instruction, but they are the support services that are needed to put those students and the staff in the right condition to accomplish the mission, the core mission of the organization. Our academic programs, and I've just in some broad categories highlighted them here, but if as you look through those, to help you understand some of the things we do, I'll share with you an example from today of the kind of work that's being done in the district. I stopped at this building this morning just to touch base with the principal, Mr. Boylan, and to make sure the room was set up for tonight's meeting. And I did interrupt a meeting he was having with one of the academic supervisors, and they were discussing the assessment. They had real-time data assessment on the table, and they were talking about, here's where we're hitting our marks, here are the things that the teachers are addressing in their lessons plan. It is targeted diagnostics that is the norm here in our school district, and this is just on any given day, in any given room that I walked into. We then led into a conversation about, the supervisor was telling the principal that one of the students had received a merit recognition for an essay written. And I said, that's interesting. And they said, yeah, actually last year, a kid from Marlboro won the national. That kid's at Wharton right now. So if you look at the product and what our students go on to, and Ivy League and college is not for everybody, and in order to address that in terms of our programs to address a diverse population, I can give you some examples of the programs that we're looking to put in place right now. Dr. Hazel is putting the work transition program, the workplace training program, which is an expansion of our student transition program, which takes those students and exposes them to different vocational experiences while they're in their high school years to help them transition into the workplace. And that's a program that she's getting underway. Some of the other opportunities in terms of relationships with higher education, Brookdale Community College, we have a relationship with them where our students earn credits. Also with Mercer County Community College. In fact, on tonight's agenda is an articulation agreement with Fairleigh Dickinson University. So we have that in place. Also, our culinary arts program over at Frhsd has a working relationship with Johnson & Wales and the Culinary Institute of America. So in many different ways, we're reaching out to the higher education organizations to transition our students and help them actually get credits for some of those institutions. So from a lot of different perspectives, whether it's our competitive learning centers and academies, or our AP courses that we offer here in the district, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. It's really a comprehensive program to address all of the students and the diverse needs of those students. Performance, and again, that was just an overview of our product, but sometimes the best view of the products is to look at the actual performance indicators. I've just, in the next couple slides, include a snapshot from the most recent school report card. And this is the HESPA test scores for language arts. Now, the three columns, the first represents Freehold Regional, the second is DFG. That stands for the District Factor Group. District Factor Group, what the state does is they do group school districts by socioeconomic status. And the reason that they do that is they want, for comparison purposes, to have communities with similar socioeconomic status. And what that does is serves to isolate the performance of the district just a little bit more. These are essentially our sibling districts, okay? So very similar, where you would expect us to perform equally as well, and we're in a comparable way as those districts. And then the third is from the state. HESPA test scores, the students who take those tests fall into one of three categories: not proficient, which is not passing the test, proficient, and advanced proficient. And we outperform our DFG in terms of collectively how many students we have in the two passing categories, but I find it amazing, frankly, that how our performance was compared to the DFG in the area of advanced proficient. For language arts, it was 28% higher than our comparable DFG score. It's a significant amount. And remember, this is within our DFG, so these are our sister districts where you would otherwise expect us to perform comparably. In the area of the mathematics for the HESPA test, very much the same story, 21% greater than our DFG, so there's other districts that we would expect to score in a similar way. So that's a snapshot of some of the performance in terms of standardized tests. But there are other measures of performance also, and I wanted to include just some samples of them here. I had mentioned Advanced Placement Program. The Advanced Placement Program we recently recognized by the College Board for really a twofold recognition. The first was expanding the opportunity for students to take advanced placement courses, and that is important. And the College Board recognized the regional district for expanding that opportunity. What I found more interesting was that in addition to that, the students scoring 3 or above, which is the higher end of the score range, that actually, the percentage of students actually increased. So even though we expanded the scope of the students who were accessing the advanced placement courses, the performance of that group also went up. So both quantity and quality, and I thought that was something worthwhile to put into this presentation. Also, QSAC, which is the state's monitoring program. QSAC stands for the Quality Single Accountability Continuum. It's a comprehensive review of the school district in virtually all areas of the operation, and we are listed as a high-performing district in accordance to QSAC. Model programs, and again, these are just some examples of some of the accolades that the district has received. Cold Snap High School with the model program for bilingual ESL, Howell High School, the model arts education. District-wide, our professional learning communities have been recognized by the state as this is the way it should be done. And really, that goes back to, that's part of our culture. The professional learning community is really the foundation of sharing those experiences, and that serves to maximize our human resource when we can have that in place. In addition, there are numerous student and staff awards, many of which you saw here tonight. I'd like to just mention one of them that we are honored to have a principal that received the Visionary Principal Award. Mrs. Zina Durbe was recently honored with that award, as well as we've had Teachers of the Year statewide. And there's just numerous examples of our students and our staff excelling. So those of you that have experienced the district from a parent point of view, from and through your children, have a good feel for what the quality of the program is. But with any product, if you will, and one of our significant challenges is really finding the right balance between the quality of the product and the demand and expectation for that quality, along with the price point and the tolerance for cost. So where is the responsible balance of those two things? Let's move to the financial side. Some of the highlights for our budget that we're presenting to the board and to the community on April 27th is no increase in the general fund tax levy. I mentioned before that state budget law allows us to increase our tax levy by 2%. We chose not to do that this year. Just recognizing, what the environment in this regional community economically and where our program stood, we felt that it was in the best interest to not take a 2% increase on the tax levy, and we were able to do that. So this budget has a flat tax levy. Also, we have additional funds into the area of instruction, and when we look at the appropriations, and I've noted it on here, all areas of the budget have been reduced with the exception of instructional programs. The overall budget, general fund budget, went out $1.7 million, yet nearly $4 million of additional money is going into those instructional categories. Again, this is consistent with internally our philosophy in developing a budget to push as many dollars as we can into the instructional program. So all non-instructional areas of the budget have been reduced, and the instructional resources have been increased. Also, we were able to defer the implementation of participation fees for athletics and extracurriculars for 1 year. Recently, I believe it was in the February meeting, I presented to the Board of Education a model, a plan to implement participation fees, and I told the board at that time that I fully expected participation fees to be part of the budget package for this year. Fortunately, state aid came through in a way that was not expected, and at this point, it was one of the very last decisions that we made was to say, let's table participation fees for 1 year. So we were able to do that. And then another important indicator, I think it's an important indicator, is where we stand in relation to the adequacy budget. The adequacy budget is a term that the state has developed, and it's a calculation that defines what should the school district be spending. And it is school by district by district by district. So based on that calculation, the state sets our adequacy budget at X. We are offering a budget that's $4.3 million below that adequacy number, and we're proud of what we've been able to do there. So those are the highlights, the financial highlights. Let me just get you familiar with the different revenue categories. Most importantly, on this chart, you'll see that the general fund tax levy remains at zero. We were able to, we did receive additional state aid based on the governor's budget address, which occurred in late February. One of the other areas that I wanted to point out was federal aid. Typically, we don't see federal aid in the general fund area of the budget, not in this district. However, there was a component of the stimulus funds from the federal government, and it was called the Ed Jobs Funds. And that was awarded to school districts during the course of this last year. And the advice that we received from the state Department of Education was, don't spend it. We had an opportunity to infuse it into the budget that we're currently in, the school year we're currently in. But we decided to hold back and look at it as a revenue for this budget, not knowing exactly what situation we would be in terms of state aid. So I talk about this federal aid program because the most important thing to understand is that this is a one-year revenue item. It's not going to be, I don't anticipate any more federal stimulus funds in the future year. In fact, if you look at special revenue fund, and let me just take a moment to point out from an accounting perspective, things are accounted for in the three funds you see up on the screen. Obviously, the vast majority moves through the general fund. Those are all of the things that you're used to seeing. The special revenue fund is for grants that are specifically earmarked, and you can see it's a fairly low proportionate amount of our total operation. The decline that you see there is due to, again, it's a federal program. Our stimulus money that we received for special needs program was over 2 years. The year we're currently in is the second year. So the year this budget represents, that money has fallen away. So that's the status of our special revenue fund. And debt service fund, that's in accordance with the long-standing debt service schedule we had based on a referendum from some 10 years ago. So that's a quick overview of the revenues. We jump to the appropriation side. And I'm going to spend more time on each of these categories. As I had mentioned before, all areas of the budget have been reduced with the exception of the instructional areas. And we are purposing those dollars to the classrooms to the greatest extent that we were able to. But I think that it's a fair question from the community to say, is this the right amount for you to be spending? How do you know? If the purpose of the public hearing is for you to get the information you need to go to the polls and make an informed decision, how do you know that we're spending the right amount of money? I think one indication was the adequacy budget that I had talked about earlier. But another useful tool is put out by the state annually, and it's called the comparative cost per pupil. The comparative cost per pupil breaks down school district operations into these categories and then reports out on a per pupil basis. And they do that for comparative purposes. It equalizes things. They also go as far as to group school districts by both grade span and by enrollment size. So they want to try and break it down into a meaningful way so that you in the community, when you go to look at this information, you can see how does my district stack up in terms of spending compared to other similar districts. An apples to apples look. The data is from our audited financial statements. Our financial records are audited annually. They're submitted to the state. That's the source data from which they do this analysis. And in the overall cost per pupil, we are the yellow bar behind me. You can see how we stack up. And we're going to go through each of these categories, but I just want to brief you on how this lays out. There are actually 4 different groups being measured here. The red line that goes across, that represents 100%. The state average for high school districts, in the way I'm presenting it, let's anchor that as the measure from which we see how the other groups are in relation to that. So state average on each of these years, we'll say, is 100%. The blue is Monmouth County high school districts. The red are districts statewide that are within our DFG. Again, the same socioeconomic group, and high school districts. And the yellow is Freehold Regional. So statewide, there are 31 high school districts. That's the red line. Within our DFG, there are 9. And in Monmouth County, of the 31, there are 5, just to give you a sense of what districts this represents. So the overall cost per pupil for the overall budget, this is how we stack up. And you can see that we're significantly less. And our track record is year after year after year significantly less. I think it's important when you're looking at that balance as a member of the community and say, okay, quality of my product. You look at the accolades, the awards, the students we had here today, our HESPA test scores, our SAT test scores. You look at the quality of the product, and then this is the other side of that equation, the price point. I think we have a very competitive product, and it's a budget that we're proud of. If we want to drill down into some of the other categories, and you're going to see the same type of thing. This is in the area of instruction. This is interesting where the yellow bar reaches up the highest. And that does make sense to me because that is where we want to have our dollars at. If we move through some of the other support services, you can see how we stack up in terms of cost per pupil spending. Administration, operations and maintenance, so it's each and every category. In fact, our rankings, the state goes as far as to rank the school districts, and among the 5 Monmouth County school districts, we're ranked number 1 for each of these years. Among the 9 school districts in the state that are the same DFG, are sibling districts, we rank number 1 in each category, with the exception we came in second in the area of operations or maintenance. So one district spent a little bit less than us. And then overall in the state, we're either 1, 2, or 3 in every category for the 31 districts in the state. So we feel that we have a very responsible spending track record for the community's consideration. Other instructional programs, and there are some other areas of the budget that are not addressed by the comparative spending guide. One of those is transportation, and the reason is because transportation costs are so geographically driven that you can't quantify it in a meaningful way. If you have a very rural community, it's just, that's the geography. Their transportation is going to be different than a very densely populated community, and not for any decision that the district is making. It's just, that's the nature of the community. So the state steps away from any kind of comparative cost measure there, but they do something else. They do look at seat utilization, bus utilization, and they set a mark of 1.2, which is their measure, that districts need to be above that. And we're significantly above that. We're in the 1.7 range, so we meet that mark as well. Capital, we have for the second year in a row, we have a very modest capital budget. There are no capital projects planned for this coming year. There were no capital projects, significant capital projects in the current year's budget. This is also something that the administration has discussed with the board at a recent public meeting as to capital planning in a long-range capital planning perspective. What are our options and how can we leverage solar power to meet our capital needs? Special revenue fund, I touched on that earlier. The decrease because of the reduction in the federal funds, as expected. It's a 2-year program. And the debt service fund is, of course, that final item. Performance in terms of property taxes. Now, I'll give everyone a minute to get oriented to this slide. The most important would be the change in the tax rate, I think is probably the most direct, meaningful. I want to talk a little bit about how the general levy, the tax levy, is allocated up among the 8 constituent municipalities. And this is something that's imposed on us by the state. Came up with this methodology many years ago. Essentially, it takes into consideration 2 factors. One is the property value of your town, and the other is your student population. And the process is to translate each of the 8 municipalities' assessed value. Now that's what you would see on your property tax bill. That may or may not approximate market value. It depends when the last time your municipality had a revale. But what the state does says, we need to bring all of these 8 communities up to some common standard, which they call equalized value. So that's what they will do. They will equalize, just for the purposes of this calculation, the values of all of the properties in the 8 communities. They then go community by community and they split the value of that property in half. Well, they split it proportionately between elementary students and high school students. The high school equalized value, that is the basis for the splitting of the tax rate. So there are some nuances to that calculation, but the most significant influence that we've seen is changes in enrollment. And that can drive it up and down. We have the very same levy, so it's the very same total amount for our general fund levy, yet we have all 8 communities changing their tax rates. And that's simply a result of this calculation that apportions the tax burden to the various communities based on those 2 things. We have 3 towns that are seeing tax rate reductions. We have 4 towns that are seeing modest increases of less than a penny. And we have 1 town, Farmingdale, which is seeing a significant increase. If you look at what's happening in Farmingdale, it's the high school population. They have a 55% increase in their projected high school population. So that shifts a significant amount of their property value over to that high school regional tax base side, and has had that impact on the tax rate in Farmingdale. I went back and looked at the last 5 years or so of tax rate history in Farmingdale to see how they've fared over those years. For the last 4 years, Farmingdale has seen a decrease in the tax rate from the regional district. And again, most likely, in speaking with Mrs. Lavin, had one small class moving through high school. That class is gone, replaced by a traditionally sized class of high school students coming in, and we see this impact. Interestingly, Farmingdale's tax rate is less here than it was 5 years ago. So it's never good news to have a significant increase in your property taxes. However, Farmingdale is in a situation where they've had multiple years in a row of reduction. And the reason for all of that is the high school enrollment component of the calculation. Here's the tax impact. This is based on preliminary assessed values from the county's tax assessor office, and they do an excellent job of providing very good information in a very timely way. They're usually right on. It's just that in their process, they don't finalize it until after the public hearing. So we expect this to be pretty much right on what the property tax impact is going to be of this budget. So, and this is the final slide, but I hope what I set out to accomplish was to talk about a little bit about our process in budget development and how it is a perpetual process of continuous improvement, how the district's track record of academic performance has been outstanding, just as evidenced by some of the accolades and some of the test scores that I've included for your consideration tonight. And also on the price point, we feel is a very reasonable, responsible price point. It strikes the right balance in terms of quality and cost for the program that we offer the community. There will be this presentation, it's Mr. Clark is filming it, we'll be putting that up on our website. There's also links to additional information where you can look at district's performance, whether it's a school report card, the academic performance, or the comparative spending guide, the financial performance, and of course I know members of the media are here, and we have we're in constant communication with them. So we want to do the best we can to make our case that we think this is the right product for the community. Mr. Lawson, if I could invite the board back to the table, and then maybe we could start with questions from the board, and then we'll move out to the community. Yes.
Just computation, what's the percent? 0.03%.
Okay, could we start with questions from the board members for Mr. Boyce?
When the mayor calls me, can I have him give you a ring?
Absolutely.
Because I know I would get a call if this is in the paper tomorrow.
Mr. Boyce, all this is contingent to a greater or lesser degree on whether the budget is passed, obviously.
Yes, actually, Mr. Kaiser, let me just briefly talk about what that process looks like. So April 27th, the 8 communities vote on our budget. If the budget fails, the process is that the mayors of the 8 communities pull together and decide what to do with the tax levy. It's actually, what you're voting on is the general fund tax levy, which is just a component, but it's the overall program. That's what we believe, that's what we like to communicate. But the mayors will decide what to do with that tax levy. They can keep it the way it is, or they can reduce it. If all 8 agree, then that recommendation is made to the board along, or not the recommendation, that decision is rendered to the board, along with recommendation of specifically what areas they believe should be cut on the appropriation side. If something other than all 8 agree, then it's called a failure to agree, and it automatically goes to the Commissioner of Education. That is what happened last year. Our budget was defeated. All 8 mayors, there was not agreement among all 8, and it went to the Commissioner of Education, who made the final determination at the end of June. So that's what the process looked like. If the budget passes, then what's presented here is put in place come July 1.
Can the Commissioner of Education make specific line item recommendations, or will he throw it back to the board and say, here's a number, cut it?
Yeah, my understanding is the Commissioner does have the authority to do that, but our experience with the Commissioner is that he looks to, last year, the Commissioner seemed to understand what the total global situation is in the district and understand what the impact of those cuts were, and then make his decision accordingly.
The municipalities must tell you what items they wish to see cut out of the budget. You do not have to follow those recommendations, and the Commissioner does not have to follow those recommendations. But the municipalities must tell you or give their advice as to where the cut should come from.
Mr. Placido?
The Colts Neck was a little different than I anticipated. Can you just provide an explanation for how you arrived at that, given your synopsis that you provided us?
Let me just look at Colts Neck's data quickly here. Colts Neck did see the sharpest decrease in equalized value. However, most communities saw a decrease in equalized value. Actually, 7 of the 8 communities saw a decrease in the equalized value. So the decrease in Colts Neck was just over 4%. And although the high school enrollment remained substantially the same, what had an impact in Colts Neck was a 6.75% reduction in the elementary enrollment. So how that works is that means even though there's roughly the same number of high school students, a greater share of your equalized value was pushed to the high school, which then had the corresponding increase in your tax rate. So high school enrollment stayed the same, elementary enrollment dropped, and that was really the driving force. Okay, Mr. Lawson, can we open it up to the community?
Yes, indeed. We'll open it up to questions, comments from the public, at this point strictly on the budget. If you would like to comment, Mrs. Close?
My biggest concern here is there was no...
Gloria, give your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gloria Close, Manalapan.
Thank you.
My biggest concern is your great presentation, but I have a concern here. You are not allocating any money on your capital projects. I know that not too long ago you had a presentation where you broke down everything from the repairs that all the schools needed, the solar and all that stuff, right?
Correct.
Not too long ago. And you were stating that there were you needed about 27 or 29 million to address the infrastructure problems among all the schools. Now, here, I don't understand this budgeting. I did not see it from last year because these are only words. There's no figure given here. But for a budget not to have any capital project, I worry about that. Now, I'm a member of the policy committee, and we were able to put that policy for the pay to participate. It was well put together. You introduced it to the public. The public were aware. Most of the parents seem to embrace that. Because I believe at one point during the sports discussion, when you were talking about elimination, parents came forward and they were willing to pay their part to repay the sports for their children. They were not really arguing on that. And I also have a problem that after we finally succeeded and put a policy in place, you are putting the pay to participate on hold. Contingent fund, which I don't like, if the budget is approved. Now going back to the budget is defeated. You are supposedly saving 1.7 out of the pay to participate, okay? Because I believe the administration, we are supposed to pay at least $5 million or allocate $5 million to the sports. Now also in your presentation, you mentioned about $1,849.40 that you found from the stimulus money that you're going to held on but now you're applying it in the budget. We all know that you talk about the bond referendum, the amount of maybe 79 to 80 million. And we all know damn well that once you put the bond referendum, that's going to go down. People cannot afford, because you're borrowing that kind of money. That's a tremendous amount of money to put this district again into debt. Now, if you put that, if you did not spend the pay to participate, you will realize 1.7. I should explain yourself, 1.7 million. And then with this unexpected stimulus money, you have 1.8 or 1.850,000. You can apply that and fix the problems we are having now on some of our schools. Manalapan High School was granted a grant of $243 to fix the roof. We're starting to feel the money starting to come into us, even a small portion we can ask for the grant. But I think all these things is depending, we're going to put a bond referendum out there. But don't back on that, because that will go down, Mr. Boyce. Okay? And really striking a budget with no capital project, money allocated for that. And we are dealing with how many schools? 6 schools?
Correct.
No money whatsoever? That is very risky budgeting.
Okay, there's a number of things included in your comments. On our website, there is the presentation for the capital planning, and it is something that the board looked at, and looking at solar energy as a way to pay for the capital projects in the district. Importantly, many of these projects are not imminent. What we looked at doing was, let's take a look out over the next 5 years or so and see what we have coming due. A year ago, we were putting together a budget, and this district, as I've said, has always done an excellent job of appropriating money in the annual budget to support the maintenance of our facilities. Last year, we were not able to do that, as you will recall, 150 plus positions, all capital projects, many, many cuts in last year's budget. In fact, it's not reasonable to believe that an annual school budget can continue to support major facility projects in the foreseeable future. I just don't think that's a viable option. And that was for those of you who didn't see the capital plan presentation, that was the point there. That particular option was really off the table. I didn't feel it was a viable option. So the participation fees, you're right, we were absolutely prepared to put that in place at the tentative budget last meeting. I told the board that was one of the very last decisions that we made in finalizing the budget package that we're presenting to them. As is the case with all programs and services, and when a budget is defeated, everything is on the table. So I appreciate your comments. I hope that provides some clarity. And I would invite people to look at that information on our website regarding the capital plan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Go ahead.
I just don't want to speak out of turn here. Is this only question regarding the budget or?
Yes.
So there'll be another opportunity?
Yes. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your attention.
This meeting, Old next.
Yes.
When, first of all, it was a very good presentation. I mean, it really makes clear where we are. But I deal with a lot of different budgets, and I'm looking at this, and I think not in terms of adequacy of spending, but adequacy of what's being delivered. Now, I look, after all, if you weren't getting the results you're getting, then no amount of spending would be justified.
Absolutely.
I see a very broad, very successful program serving a very diverse range of students. I look at the outcome, and I see an excellent outcome, and then I look at the efficiency with which you deliver it. And it is a very cost-effective program, if you look at your presentation shows. So, to me, it is the product that matters. And I believe we have a successful product here, a very successful product. And therefore, the fact that we were able to do it while holding the tax levy flat, I think, is very responsible, and it's a very supportable budget. It's very well balanced. I do understand the evolving economic environment we're in, where we are going to be pushed doing more bonding. That is, the state is pushing that with its policies. I think that doing it the way you're doing it, it makes sense. It's a sound budget because it's a sound program that's being delivered. The budget is defended by the success of the program, and therefore it is a highly defensible, supportable budget, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Lucasio.
I just have a quick comment. I wanted to thank you for pointing out...
Your name and...
I'm sorry, Nancy Locascio, Cold Center. I like at the beginning of the presentation you pointed out the quality of the product that we're putting out, that our kids are achieving things. The recent award about the advanced placement, how we're, our high schools are one of 238 in the country that received that recognition. But to Mr. Dominion's point, it's all about what's going on in the classroom and that it's a great program that we're supporting with this budget. But I do want everyone to keep in mind, it's also, these kids that are here also have some of the great sending districts as well.
Absolutely. The product, and it's also the parents. I'm very fortunate to work in an organization that has so many dedicated, caring people and work for a community where education is so highly valued. And our colleagues in the K-8 districts, their product is our raw material. And that's really gives us, it's another major component, one of the reasons that we've had the success that we've had. I think it's an excellent point.
Anyone else? Comments, questions on the budget? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. Mr. Boyce, thank you for... Let's turn to our...
Move 5A.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to get everybody at the right spot. Page 2, items 5A, B, and C, the adoption of the proposed budget. Could I have a mover and seconder on item 5?
Move. Second.
Moved by Mr. Frhsd.
Tom.
Thank you. Okay, one more time. Questions, comments on the budget? Seeing none. Mr. Boyce?
Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Kayazin?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Hochberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Placatelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Sutera?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes. Okay. Once again, thank you, Mr. Boyce. All done while standing on a platform of shifting sands. A remarkable accomplishment. Okay. Minutes. I need a mover and a seconder for the minutes from February 28th.
I'll move. I'll second.
For Bruno. Thank you. Questions, comments on the minutes? Seeing none. Mr. Boyce?
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Kayazin?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Hochberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Placatelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Sutera?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes. Communications received are on file in the board secretary's office. Report, superintendent's report. Got anything else for us?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Board reports. Reports from board members tonight?
I do have just an update, Mr. Lawson, from the board and our policy committee members who are here. We received an email from the other day. On March 31st, the state of New Jersey will be releasing a new concussion policy, which we will need to implement. So as soon as we receive it, we will meet as a committee and forward to the board.
Great, thank you. Anything else, board reports?
I'd just like to mention that I was hanging out with my cold sick students. I was at the basketball, one of the state games for the boys. We're very proud of the boys. They did a good job this year. I also attended the ROTC ball, and amazing. They were wonderful, so well behaved, professional, and I was very proud of them.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. We will move on to public participation. Let me get my list here. Okay, first on the list, Sandy Sussman. Yes. Could you come up, sir, please, and as long as Mr. Boyce is vacated, could you use the microphone?
First, thank you for this public forum. Myself, as well as some other Jamesburg parents that are here tonight, have never been to a board meeting of yours. You're to be commended, and it's obvious why you have some of the accolades you've gotten. With that said, you'll probably be a little surprised at what I'm going to say. A few weeks ago, the citizens of Jamesburg found out that we are ending our send-receive relationship with the Monroe Board of Education. We understand, again through hearsay and rumor, that one of the primary districts they're speaking with is yours. And while you have a beautiful school, like I said, the accolades, and while every parent wants your mission statement to come true for their child, it speaks to every parent and every child everywhere. There are other considerations. And with that said, really the reason I'm here tonight in a small delegation is to ask you not to approve or to move forward with conversations regarding sending our kids to your district. And again, nothing to do with the district, but all to do with the children and how they would be affected coming to your district. We just found out, like I said, through hearsay. We've been attending our own board meetings and finding that everything seems to be somewhat secretive. We don't have the agenda that you put out. Monroe has that, and we have a good relationship with Monroe. I guess really, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look at my notes for a minute. As a community, we feel so strongly about this. We've been working on this for weeks now. The only reason you only see 5 of us here tonight, or 6, is because 200 of us are having a community meeting in Jamesburg as we speak to find out what legal action we may take, to find out what options there are, because we understand a lot of it has to do with the dollar. So I want to make it clear, our complaint is not with you, or our problem is not with you, it's with our own secretive district. So now that you know where we stand, I'm wondering, am I allowed to ask a few questions, or is that acceptable?
Mr. Lawson, maybe I can just make a statement to the board, bring everybody up to speed on what we do know, which is actually not much. I know that both Jamesburg, which is a K-8 district, has a send-receive relationship with Monroe, so they send their high school students to Monroe High School. That's on a tuition basis, and that's a long-standing relationship, as I understand it.
32 years.
And that Jamesburg is looking to explore other options. And we were contacted by Jamesburg with this idea, and there are many, many things to look at for this board to consider moving in that direction. Since then, I know that both of those boards, Monroe and Jamesburg, have taken some action to formally explore a dissolution or a change in arrangement. At this point, still not a regional issue, a Frhsd regional issue. We told them that we would be opening to listening to what they have to say and getting some of the facts, and that when we do have that information, I'll share that with the board, but it's not anything that's imminent. It's nothing that would be for this coming September. So we, at least from the Frhsd Regional's perspective, there are some things that we need to look at demographically. What's our enrollment projection looks like? What would even be our ability to handle additional students? All of that work is yet to be done and is really contingent on whether or not Jamesburg and Monroe can mutually agree upon the terms of their parting ways, and I think the state certainly would weigh in on that as well. So that's sort of what we know right now, and to our community, it's something that we'll look at. We'll look at whatever opportunities might come our way, but I think it's a little early in the process for Frhsd Regional to be having this conversation.
Fair enough. I have to say this, and I'm a firm believer in always taking the high road. Your board, who I've never met, none of you have ever met me, have been more forthright with us this evening than our own board. Monroe is trying to help us for many reasons, I'm sure, to try and stay there. I'm just hoping that as it comes up in conversation with you, and I realize now it really hasn't gone that far, that you do think about how it affects our children as well as your own. Not only the class size, but how it affects the children's acclimation to another district, how it affects our special needs, how it affects children playing sports, or the fact that 40% of our population are minorities, and of that 40%, at least 20% don't have the transportation to be able to get here for a back-to-school night, for parent-teacher conferences. It's just a long-ranging effect, not to mention the fact of the values of our property going down, but frankly, that's the least of it compared to the children. I want to thank you for your time and for your forthrightness. Thank you.
Patricia Floric.
Hi, my name is Patricia Floric. I live in Jamesburg, and we did come down, a small group of us, to let you know how we feel. For 32 years, we've been sending our kids to Monroe High School. I'm a Jamesburg kid who went to Monroe High School. My son goes to Jamesburg schools. He's in 7th grade. He is on the front line of this debacle because according to what we're discovering, and let me tell you, it is discovery, it is research. There is no forthrightness with our board. We have to go to the Monroe Board of Education to get information, which is, it's ridiculous what we're going through. We're reaching out to the governor's office. We're reaching in every direction we can. And I didn't put this out there. You are lovely people. Your school is lovely. The people I met in the hallway are lovely. It's nothing personal. But our heart is in Monroe. You have to understand that. My son plays for Monroe Wolverines. He plays Monroe Lacrosse. I've done this, and it's not just, let me just tell you, I'm not here for my son. I keep saying my son. I'm here for everybody's children, okay? They can't come here because they're working. And when you say 200 people, it may not sound like a lot, but we're 1 square mile, and we are we're outraged. I cannot convey to you how bad this is for us. And like I said, nothing personal. It's lovely. It's a lovely area. Everything's great, but it's too far away. Our babies belong in Monroe. Our heart is in Monroe, and that's where they have to go. And like here again, we're doing everything we possibly can. Please consider this when you enter this and receive, because we are fighting like the devil to keep them out of here. Okay, really and truly. You can consider everything. Okay, so honestly, it's nothing personal, but we can't come here. We just can't. We're Monroe people. We are. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Asatola. No show. Jim Sage. Gloria Close. As long as we can hear you.
On January 24th, on the January 24th meeting in Munich, I brought the attention of this board about the interview given by Mr. Placitella to a alternate local magazine disclosing who was chosen between the two candidates for the superintendent's position. On February 28th meeting, I asked the board president what action would be taken against Mr. Placitella for disclosing personal matter is still being negotiated, terms of contract have not been ratified, and the entire board has not taken a vote in public sessions. We all know that the district was waiting for the county superintendent's office if this would be approved. A decision to appoint Mr. Sampson was received by the board on April 7th. I do want this board to understand the severity of the issue. If the contract fails, where will it put this district in terms of future liability or litigation? I did call up the School Ethics Commission, the New Jersey School Board Association, and spoke to the acting superintendent of Monroe County. I was told by Mr. Swartz that there was no violation committed here. I would therefore request for Mr. Swartz in writing to give his response. I would like to ask you, Mr. Swartz, if I'm a city board member and the board is in the process of negotiating the teacher's contract, in closed session the board agrees to make a counter offer, but the board has not met with representatives of the teachers' union. I took it upon myself to speak out in public and give an interview and discuss what was agreed by the board in closed session. Tell me, Mr. Swartz, will I be in violation? Also, Mr. Canario, at one of the meetings, was not advised correctly by the legal counsel at one of the board meetings. When the discussion was about sports, she made a statement that since her daughter is or was a member of the junior varsity cheerleading, she will make sure that this board will bring the sport back since it was removed. Again, that is a pure violation of ethics. I have a question on the agenda. You can respond.
Just to make one statement, Mrs. Close, my daughter isn't even a student of Frhsd Regional yet.
But you did make a statement, okay? I'm just trying to say that I hope that the board are aware of the code of ethics for the board members. Also on your agenda, I'm just curious about, sorry, very quickly. The advancement via individual determination district leadership. I understand that, I remember this gentleman, Mr. David Blitt, he was appointed, I believe, on the supervisor position at the time. But I know this was paid through Title I. There was a total, for all these people who went to Florida, there was a total of almost $20,000 paid. I was wondering, since he was a supervisor, it's okay to send him there and maybe he can come back and then, speak to all the members concerned, like a sort of, not orientation, like a seminar. Instead of taking everybody there and then you getting a replacement for them to that time for like, what, 4 days, 5 days? I think it would be frugal if the supervisor, yes, indeed, go there, attend the seminar, and bring all the knowledge he gained back there and give a presentation to the people concerned in his group. That's one suggestion. And also here, very, very minimal, $49, using data to inform professional learning. Mrs. Evangelista attended that, and you all know she is the assistant superintendent of curriculum, but there are again 12 people who attended that. Like I said, money was not the issue because it was only $49, but the point is, when the staff, I believe there are staff here, when they all go, 12 of them attended that day, you have to get a replacement for these people. Now, since the superintendent of curriculum did attend this, I believe she's capable to bring back everything that she learned out of the seminar and educate whoever there are to educate. It's not like I said, the 49 is minimal, but I guess just the future when all of you go there, then you get a replacement for the day. That is not cost effective to the district. But sending one, like superintendent, assistant superintendent, or a supervisor of sports, I think, and bringing it back to the group and, doing a sort of a clinic would be acceptable. Thank you.
Donna, on Mrs. Close's last question, as I look at the list of people attending that course, now, obviously I'm not as well informed as you, but they all seem to be administrators or supervisors.
Yes, Mr. Lawson. The district is forming a district data team to analyze all our student achievement data. This is a workshop sponsored by the New Jersey Staff Development Council, and these are the members of our team. Yes, you'll see 2 principals, assistant principals, I believe 3 teacher members of our local professional development committee, as well as central office staff. The training is this Friday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Regarding the training for the AVID program in Florida that you had mentioned, whenever there's a professional development of this scope, it, according to the accountability regulations, requires executive county superintendent approval. And we've received that. We've submitted all of the documentation, all of the program requirements, and it's a full immersion program being put in place in Frhsd Borough. So the executive county superintendent does a critical review of that before he'll allow this scope of professional development to be put on. So there is a system of checks and balances in place. And I'm sure that Mrs. Jewell could probably provide us with some deeper understanding of the AVID program, and she and I have had some extended conversations about it, but it's a very worthwhile, very research-based, proven effective program, and it's something that we've put our resources to. But the answer was to your question was that it's a requirement that the full team be down there, and it has received executive county superintendent approval.
Mr. Boyce, can I add something there? I think Mrs. Close was referring to David Bleakley's prior trip to Florida, not the trips that were on here. Is that correct, Mrs. Close?
It looks like all of them went to Florida at the same time.
Well, Mr. Bleakley went first because he is designated as the district coordinator for the program. So he received special training prior to this. Now the team is going for the team training, that's correct.
And there was a difference of 650 between these and
After the end of the school year. They're giving up their time in the summer to go. We leave on the 26th, we get back on July the 1st. Okay. The school year is over, there won't be any need for, and I really would welcome the opportunity that you kind of put out there for, when the dust settles, for David Bleakley and I to present to the board and to whoever's in the audience a subject about which I've become very passionate, and it is the ACT program, which addresses and targets the middle achieving students. But in response to your concern, and I certainly can understand that, there's a lot of people going, we don't leave until after the school year is officially over. These teachers are giving up their time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs.
She brought that up. There's a $650 difference between Mr. Bleakley and your fee.
Because he's the site director, and he gets,
Correct.
he goes free.
His registration is part of his leadership, his supervisor position.
Thank you all. Paul Shafton?
Paul Shaflin, Marlboro. I'll echo other people. It was a great job with the budget presentation. I think it speaks volumes to the job that our temporary superintendent is doing. I wish he were staying longer. I have followed Frhsd Regional for quite a while. You see me up there taping for quite a while now. I don't speak a lot. I had my problems with Mr. Wasser, and I've voiced them often in his presence. I've heard all the other complaints, and I haven't really made much commentary on it. One of the things I've heard complaints about this board for a long, long time is the legal team. I hear complaints from town, from meetings, all over. A lot of people don't like this legal team. I didn't know that much firsthand. I've been observing. But I think they sealed the deal with me 2 meetings ago when Gloria Close was talking. I don't always agree with Gloria Close. I don't think it was the end of the world that Mr. Placitella made a little boo-boo and said something maybe he shouldn't have a little too soon. I myself don't think it rises to an ethical lapse. Gloria apparently does, and she questioned rightfully about that. The attorney initially gave her a civil answer, that there was no ethical breach, that the board couldn't bring charges, whatever. And she asked a very simple question to the attorney. Can a private citizen make an ethics complaint? And rather than a simple, dignified, civil answer, he looked at her and said, that's for you to find out. That was the most disrespectful display I've ever seen from an attorney on a dais of any type of body like this. I sat on the zoning board and had my attorney ever talk to a member of the public like that, I would have asked for executive session to have him removed. I think it was absolutely despicable, and again, I think it just shows me, once and for all, that everything that I've heard that's wrong about this attorney's firm probably is. And I would really recommend that this board moves forward in every effort to get a new and better representation for itself. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Cindy O'Brien?
I just have a quick question. Even though we're supposed to be so in the know here.
Could you just... Thank you.
My question was very simple. I wanted to know Mr. Sampson's start date. And since I'm supposed to know everything, because we keep being accused of knowing stuff that we don't know, we're just following through. I still wanted to know, what is his start date? A very simple question.
Mr. Sampson's contract in his current district provided him with a 120-day out clause. The district can keep him, if they so choose, for 120 days, which would bring us very close to the end of June.
Right, bring us into June.
We know that he is efforting to get to us sooner. We believe the critical point, of course, being appointment of a predecessor. So it's something that unfortunately is out of our control. Worst case scenario, we're looking at June as a start date, hopefully sooner, but that's where we are now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that finishes the list. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'll just be quick, probably been a long time. I just wanted...
Could you just state your name and residence for the record?
Monica Ludwig, and I'm also from Jamesburg. Patty and Sandy pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. Other than my personal concern is that I have 2 children, and I'm appealing to the moms and the dads. I have a daughter that will make the cutoff, and she will be in Monroe Township High School, but my son is the year behind her. And what our board is proposing is that I have 2 children that are a year apart, 2 and 3 in high school. And I was basically told that it would be a slight inconvenience. So I don't know anybody here that would want to be in my situation. My husband and I have had our kids acclimated into the Monroe community since they were 4 years old. So with hope that they went to high school, they would go there and not feel like outcasts, that they would have friends there, they play sports, and all that would be for nothing. They would be coming to this district. I'm sure they would be able to make friends, but they would be basically off here with, everything that my whole future was planned out and just changed about 3 weeks ago. So the way I think. And the very bottom of my list is that I'm worried about my property value. I'm worried about the fact that my kids live in different high schools. And just as my own reference, I was wondering if you were able to tell me when Jamesburg first coached.
No,
Like a year ago.
they really can't at this point in time, I'm sorry, to stop it, because it's a legal issue, it becomes a legal issue, and really can't get into that.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Are the minutes of the district open to anybody or just people from that district? In other words, if we want to get minutes of your meetings, if we can.
The minutes, once approved, are available on the district website. Thank you.
May I respond, Mr. President, to the gentleman who thinks I was rude to Mrs. Close? Gloria and I think, have a very good understanding with each other, and that we be able to talk to each other. I'm sorry he was offended at that. But I, in the ethics of my profession, cannot give legal advice to anybody who walks up to me, especially when I'm sitting with my client. So my client is in jeopardy. I cannot give legal advice to Mrs. Close to tell her yes she can or no she can't. So I'm sorry if he was offended at that. And as I said, I have the greatest respect for Gloria and her ability to get up and talk her mind and speak her mind. But I can't give legal advice. So if you're offended by that, I'm very sorry. But I cannot, as the ethics of my profession, give legal advice to somebody, and that was a legal question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
It's not a totally different subject. I didn't write to be on a list to speak, or?
No, that's why I'm asking now.
My name is Kathy Kirk, and I'm from Howell. And this story starts about 4 years ago. Actually, it was just in this time frame of the year. I had a freshman enter Howell High School in 2006, and her teacher in the English department handed her a book called The Pact. And she said, "I'm sorry, but I have to give you this to read." Well, she started to read it, and I saw it laying at home one day, and I picked it up, and I started to read it. And I said, I need to do something about this book. And I came here to the board must have been April of 2007. I think Dr. Kegler was sitting in Donna Evangelista's place. Mr. Wasser was here. And many people are the same, and there's some new faces. I highly respect this district, Mrs. Durbig. I love the school, the teachers, I know care for the children. But as a mom, just coming into actually the public school with a 5th grade boy and a 9th grade girl at that time. So if you do the math, I have a freshman again. At that time, I read the book, I marked it up, I asked you guys to look at this. Curriculum, honors English, 9th grade. Went back home for a month, came back, asked you guys, did you read the book? A lot of people put their heads down. I don't even want to try to read some of this to you, but if I have to be heard, this book is so forthright for an adult to read. I have some of my friends who've put this book down. And for a teacher to say to my daughter in 9th grade, I'm sorry you have to read this book. Maybe she knew where we came from and the moral fiber that runs through our household. There's a lot of unsuspecting children that are given this book, and my heart breaks. I could go home right now and have my son ask for an alternate read, because this book is getting ready to be handed to his honors English class. It's a pact, it's called The Pact, it's about teenage suicide, and I know you know over the past 5-8 years in this community and a little bit out from us, the fiber that runs, again, for this subject. And they're asked to read this alongside Romeo and Juliet. So, my daughter, I took the book away from her, she was given A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, okay? She read it by herself. We had an argument in our home, which I hated to do because of school and what they're told to read. Now, I wrote to the author at that time, and I didn't get anywhere with that. I went to conferences, and I just happened to ask for a conference with his English teacher this year. I think he had a little bit of a reprieve with a substitute teacher coming in, and the teacher that came back off of maternity leave is a little bit tougher. So his grade kind of went down. I said, let me go in and talk to him. So this book came up again, and my heart just dropped. Because to go back, I came 1 month, I came back the next month, and I was told by, I hate to name names, but the person that was in charge of curriculum, that this book would be moved up to 12th grade. Okay, to a more mature audience. Now I go into conferences and I'm told that this is going to be his spring break reading. And I went, what? Now I haven't had a freshman in 4 years. So of course I was shocked. I didn't think I had to check up on what I was told by the board. So now he's going to get this book. And I said, is there an alternate book? She said, not that I know of. So I said, ooh, now I have to revisit this. And I have to come and revisit you and ask for you to read this book, look into this book, and say, would you feel comfortable handing this book to 14-year-olds? Okay? And take it off district-wide. I'm only here from Howell. There's got to be a parent with 9th graders in each of the classes. But explicit foreplay, sex. It's a suicide pact. What these kids went through, what the young man that got put in jail went through. The F-bomb. I mean, on page 9, on page 11. I mean, I don't live in a hole, but I don't think that we should be giving this to our children in an honors English class. My son speaks English. He doesn't need to use that word. And that's what we teach him. But there's a whole plan of the suicide in here. I don't know what else to say, but help me. Or I work with Miss Evangelista. Read the book. Find another book. You know, do we have to keep putting suicide and the discussion of suicide down their throats? You know, if you want, I was told by the head of the English department, they want them to read more Shakespeare. I said, please, if you want them to read more Shakespeare in 9th grade, assign them more Shakespeare. My child, both of them, A students, but they're not going to go look for Shakespeare. It's hard to read. I'm trying to eat my way through One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest right now, and I can't for the life of me understand. I'm just going to stop at this book. There's a lot of books that are on the English for years. There's got to be better books out there in literature for our children to shape their minds, to go forward.
Thank you very much for your comments. Ms. Evangelista, would you?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to Mrs. Clerk.
Yeah.
I can show you the post notes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. On to our agenda. We did the budget. Any reason why we can't push everything together? Right. Okay. If there's no objection from my colleagues, I'd like for us to move the entire agenda, H1 through L1, but please note. Right. It's in the calendar. The list of changes that we got from Dr. Kegler, and also the yellow addendum to the The list of changes notes the change to attachment 4, which is being distributed right now. It's the custodial grounds and maintenance calendar. And, okay, if you would, yeah, great.
If you make note in the agenda that on page 6 for the paraprofessionals, that there is a change named to Calaruso, Richard. At the Raise Academy staff on page 7. That this is an additional position, that to please add that in. On page 12, please add that an additional position and an end date of 6/30/11 should be added to the 6-period assignment. And the last one is the calendar that was just passed out, that please add Monday, December 26th, 2011, winter recess to the custodial grounds and maintenance calendar.
Any questions on those changes? All right. Then, again, if no one objects, if I could get a motion and a seconder on items H1 through L1 with the changes and the addendum included.
A motion.
Moved by Mr. Bruno.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Sotera. Okay, questions, comments, discussions on the agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Boyce.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Kayat?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mr. Hochberg?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was spacing out before. I do want to say just one thing, if I may. I don't want this to be swept or forgotten about. We have John Sharappa, who's retiring from Frhsd Township. Many, many years John's put into the district, not only as an excellent teacher, but a fantastic girls basketball coach. And he is retiring from teaching and coaching. However, he's going to continue to be coaching girls basketball. And I just think it's a great thing that this gentleman be allowed to keep coaching as long as he would like to. So I just want to congratulate John on a great career.
Great, thank you.
And I vote yes.
Mr. Plasitano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sotera?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes, but I do need to abstain on the, take no part in the vote on Secretary's calendar. Where is it? K-17. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Before we move on, I'd like to welcome to our administrative team, Stacy Ferreira, who is now the science supervisor at Howell High School. Stacy has replaced Jane Weiss. Thank you and welcome.
Okay. Old business?
Yes, Mr. Lawson. Just one thing, we should at least inform the public where we do stand on the RFP for the attorney.
Mr. Boyce or someone from the...
Well, we narrowed it down to 3 firms, and now we have to go into the process of interviewing them. So we're just at that point where we have to bring it to the board and discuss it before we have our interviews.
How many responses to the request did we get?
We got about 8.
8 or 9?
But we thought that the 3 that we came up with were the most qualified and had the most experience with bigger schools and more school.
Okay, great. So the next step now is to set up interviews and keep the process moving. Great, thank you. Any other old business? New business? Seeing none. We need executive session.
Yes.
I need a motion to go into...
Mr. Lawson, if I may, a new case has come down, called the Rutgers case. The adage of bad cases make bad law. This is a very interesting case, which I think the fact situation caused it to be a little bit onerous. However, what the gravamen, or what the aspect that is most troubling, or what has to be done, is that the board must now hold its private sessions either at the end of a meeting or at the beginning of a meeting, but really can't interrupt a meeting except for unusual circumstances to have a private session in the middle of a meeting. It also frowns, the case also frowns on having executive sessions at the end of the meeting, although it is somewhat more allowed than certainly in the middle of the meeting. So my recommendation to the board is to call for a private session at the end of its meeting. And the second aspect of the case is that the court wants us to be a little bit more specific in what you are going into private session about. You just can't say attorney-client privilege anymore, but you have to be a little bit more specific. I'll be working with Mr. Boyce to come up with a resolution which will encompass that for the board to adopt. In addition, the board has to hold a meeting in April, since it doesn't have its organization meeting in April, because the law says that you must hold a meeting once per month. Therefore, the board should set aside right now at this session as to what day they wish to hold the meeting, and then have that private session, let's say, beginning at 7 o'clock, and having a public meeting beginning at 8 o'clock. That's what the court seems to indicate that they want, and normal, so the public is informed of the private session, and they don't have to be kept waiting for hours and hours for a public session, which I think is good. I may disagree with some aspects of the case, but I think that's probably very beneficial to the board and to the public. So consequently, you should now decide when you have your meeting and call for a private session to discuss. And then the agenda, as you publish it, can say more specific things of what you want to do it. And, you know, the problem is you don't know exactly what's going to be discussed, because things will come up between now and next month, which you can't put on an agenda. Right. But we have to cross that bridge when we come to it.
But you've worked with Mr. Boyce as to how to focus.
All right, can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we know we have to have a private session at the end, can we start the meeting at 7 instead of 8 then?
Yes, if you want to know your private sessions, yes, you can. I would advise the board to try and put their private sessions before, because you can't really come back and do anything public after your private session. It may be at 10 o'clock or 10:30. You can't expect the public to wait around for 2 hours.
Okay, anybody got any suggestions for a meeting in April? April 11th, end of the month. 11th, 18th?
Can't do it after the election.
We have negotiations,
I thought they changed it to make the second.
Did they change that?
The budget?
Changing the second negotiations.
Mrs. Lavin is just noting that the change in the organizational meeting it's now May 2nd because of the change in the election date, actually pushed the election beyond the reorganization meeting. So within the 2 full weeks following the week of the election, you need to have your reorg meeting. So as I sent a memo back to the board, so May 2nd is the reorg meeting. That's different. We need to have one more meeting in April.
You have to have it before the election. Yeah, it can't be after the election, because there's no board after the election. The board dissolves and organizes the organization. Theoretically, there's no board except in cases of extreme emergency. But you have the 18th or the 25th. I would suggest the 18th, if I may, because the 25th is a little bit close to the election. But
18th is the first night of Passover.
That's Passover.
18th,
you're right.
The 11th looks like the best. It's only 2 weeks. So it'll be 2 weeks for tonight, is that really, really bad for anybody? Okay. The 11th at Pine Street, and we'll hold executive at 7. Now, we had a mover and a seconder for executive. We didn't.
You're going to discuss in executive session grievances and personnel matters.
I need a mover.
Move. Second.